inspire us, uplift, and remind us of the strengths in our roots. I'm Leaso Filoyali'i coming to you live from Katy, Texas. Tonight, we are incredibly honored to welcome Doug Fiefia, a husband, father, entrepreneur, and now the Utah House Representative for District 48. Welcome, Doug.
Hey, y'all. How's it going? Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's an honor to have you on our podcast. So grateful. I can't tell you how blessed we are to have you on our show tonight, and I feel like it's going to be a good night. So thank you so much again, Doug. Can you take us back? Let's start with your humble beginnings. I learned that you used to live in Kearns, and by the way, I used to be in Kearns. I was there for about a year or so. um, Tell us that story. I want to know about the part where your family all lived in one house with other families. So can you share that with us?
Yeah. So early on in my childhood, we lived with my grandparents and all of my mom's siblings. And there were five families. We were the largest. And so we got the living room. And I can still remember us as kids sleeping on that hardwood floor. And we would be nestled together like little sardines to stay warm at night in Utah winters. And then in the summer nights, to get some AC and some fresh air when it was hot, my grandpa would take his mattress out to the front lawn, and we'd all sleep with my grandpa out there just to get some free air conditioning. And so those aren't days that are lost on me. It's something that drives me still to this day. A lot of what our parents did was they were usually balancing, several jobs, and my dad was always at work. And I can just remember him in glimpses as a little kid, coming late at night, long after we were tucked in bed, and leaving early in the morning before we would get up for school or for the day. And then at night, while we were asleep, him and my mom would go clean office buildings. And so the struggles, the early struggles of trying to make it in America and live the American dream, it wasn't all butterflies and rainbows like maybe my parents saw on TV in early Hollywood, but it was something that they were willing to fight for, to provide for us kids. Later on in kind of the progression of my parents and how we progressed in America, my dad learned the trade of drywall. And after about a year of him working for a company, he decided to try his hand at entrepreneurship and start his own drywall company.
Can I
And
stop you there real quick though?
sure, yeah,
Okay, so first of all, for what I understand, just learning about you and your family, which is a very unique story, your dad didn't speak any English at all, and so they migrated here, not knowing anything about America other than it's the promising land, right? And
for
so,
sure.
how did he have that desire and that let's say the what's that word? I can't even think right. How did he have the strength, the nerve to even want to do something like that in a world that is unfamiliar to him?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's probably similar to you and I, is what drives us is our kids and our family, and having no other option but providing for your family. And I'm just still amazed at his ability to go out and find work in like a world that he didn't really understand. I think at this point, maybe his English was broken and just trying to figure it out. I know he printed off flyers, and all he would do was drive around all day to different construction sites and just ask, whoever the foreman was, like, "Hey, can I bid on this job? Hey, we do drywall. Can we bid on this job?" And, I fast forward later in life, I thought I'd never start a construction company, but I couldn't imagine doing that. Maybe me personally, I don't have the grit that my dad had, but it just, I've relied on social media and advertising and other things to get business and get work done. But my dad had no other option but to find work and to provide for our family. And so, man, I just am super humbled and grateful that my dad had I don't know what the word, the tenacity to go after kind of big dreams and say, "Hey, I'm going to come start a company on my own." And there is no option other than making it happen for my family.
Okay, so going back to what you being a child, right? I'm seeing all this raveled around you with your parents working hard. When did you realize going to school were when did you realize the living situation is not normal? That this families don't all live together in one home, right? And that did you
Yeah.
realize I didn't know that I was poor, right? I didn't, until you leave and then you realize, damn, all this time I thought I was really rich because I had family around. When did that come into place for you?
I don't think I knew we were poor until later in life, like you, right? Because we were happy. We didn't know any better. I hear stories of my parents um, now talking about how they had to make sure we had enough food on the table, but it always seemed like we had enough. I've told this story before, but I still remember the taste of tin that my grandpa would cook supa moa in, or like a chicken soup in.
Yeah.
He'd use that kind of metal pot so much that I still remember that taste. And that back then it was like, man, this is just how it tastes. And
Yeah.
now I think what it's supposed to taste like, I'm like, man, that was just a very cheap pot that he used. And we would have known no different. And so, man, I just think about what we'd gone through as young kids and now having what we have, being able to live in America and the many opportunities that our parents sacrificed so much
Mhm.
for. We wouldn't have never known that we were poor because my parents provided so much and made sure that we never came home from school thinking we didn't have, right? It became apparent, like at school, it was just like, man, all these kids wearing the new shoes or the new clothes, and me being the youngest of five, I had the hand me downs, like my oldest brother's like shoes that didn't fit, or my older brother's pants that didn't fit right, but we would just,
Or
close
wear
the
their
loop on
underwear.
was that.
Or wear your other brother's underwear. It's still good. I'm only saying
I
that
mean,
because I have five sisters. So
yes, I mean, we shared everything. So I just am grateful that I never felt that at school or at like different sports activities that we were involved in, is that I never felt like I didn't belong and
Mhm.
didn't have that kind of um, feeling like, man, my parents aren't doing everything they could to make this work for us.
How did you guys get into music? How did that come into play? Was it when you guys were younger? How did you guys start? I mean, majority of Polynesians sing. How did you guys get into starting getting involved into music?
Yeah, that's a good question. So my grandparents and my mom and all of her family, my grandparents served missions in Tonga back when the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints would call just families to go out and preach the
Mm,
gospel around the islands. And what they were known for was traveling and singing. That's how they would do missionary work, is through music. And so that was passed on to my mom and her sisters. They still, to this day, sing at different events. And that then was kind of how we were raised. All of me and my cousins growing up singing together, and then that kind of translated to me and my siblings singing. And music is just something special. We will be sitting around at home on a Sunday after dinner and just talking, and then like we'll just slowly get gathered around the piano, and then my sister will start playing, and then we're like, oh, let's play this song. Oh man, we haven't sang that song in years. And it's just a good um, thing that just brings us together. And it's allowed for so many opportunities in college, and different opportunities to perform for um, different things throughout life. But I think that's honestly, if people have seen me speak in public, or people are like, man, I'm surprised, like you're not afraid. Like
mhm,
usually, immigrant kids, they
mhm.
come with like, oh, we're nervous, I don't want to talk. And that was all real. In the classroom, I never wanted to participate, never wanted to raise my hand. I always felt a little bit inadequate at times. But the confidence that I gained in speaking and performing, what came from that early days of singing. And so I think without that, I don't think I would have that confidence to stand up today, even in government, and
Mm.
and express my feelings and my thoughts. And so I love that you brought that up, because I actually haven't thought about that in a while, but that's actually, I think, where the early confidence came from. Is my mom would have us perform anytime someone came over to the house. She would have us all come in, and we knew when mom calls us to sing, we don't say no. We sing whatever she wants and for as long as she wants. And it just was the thing that people knew when they came over to the Fiefia home, that we were singing and music was going to be a part of the night.
Wow. So with five siblings, how was that growing up in one big household?
Um, it was fun. It was busy. We always were at home. Our home kind of was the home that all of our cousins came to also. But it was my best friends growing up were my two older siblings, because my parents at a young age kind of made us and forced us to hang out. And so when,
Yeah.
like, my older sister, who's two older than me, wanted to go to the movies, it was like, okay, take your younger brothers. And it just became the thing. And we did everything together, which I'm so grateful now, because we still have strong relationships as adults. And we've built that into our kids also, to be close, because our parents did that at a young age. And so it was hectic. We fought, we loved hard, we fought hard, but it was fun. And again, it was usually filled with music, usually crying and then music. So it was fun.
And then you forget why you cried in the beginning.
Yes.
That's a blessing, though, to have so many siblings, because then you never feel alone. Um, so, how has your Polynesian heritage shaped your worldview and leadership style?
I think it has completely shaped the way that I approach leadership and politics. When I think of the Polynesian people, um, the first thing that comes to mind, if I were to think of what is the one word that kind of encompasses the Polynesian people, and I would say it's love.
Mhm.
We lead with love. It's not usually when you think of, I think of like my mentors that are Polynesian. They didn't do it for the money. They didn't do it for the title. They did it because it was the right thing to do, and they were serving each other. And there's the phrase that everyone uses that, this person would give the shirt off of their back. And
Mhm.
I think many Polynesians would actually do that. It's not just a saying, it's just who we are. It's built in us. And so I think it's just a special, unique piece of who we are. And I try to lead with that. I'm not going to say I'm perfect, but when I think about how the way I want to lead, I think that's what makes me maybe a little bit different than my colleagues. Is I'm coming from a place of love and respect and understanding, and not from I'm right and this is the way that it has to be. I'm usually leading with love first. And because of that, even when I disagree with other people, they know that it's coming from a place of love. And so it usually doesn't end in a fight. It ends with respect and understanding.
We got a question for you. What is your point of view on why is the stereotype that Samoans are primarily suited for sports so prevalent in media and pop culture?
I think it's probably something that is just more natural to us, right? I think we're I think naturally athletic, and so it's probably something that um, it's something that it's stuck. And I think because we've come from the islands to America, honestly, I think of kind of my parents in our situation, we were just looking for something to fit in and to be good at and to thrive here. And I think sports came so naturally, being that rugby and other sports are prevalent in the islands. And I think that's what kind of we've attached ourselves to. But man, I would say if there's anything that I could share with this audience and with young Polynesian kids, is really
Mhm.
that you can do and be anything that you want to. The skills that we've been blessed with really allow us to go and kind of take that love that I was talking about earlier to
Mhm.
different industries and different areas in the world.
I have another question for you. How can we challenge and change the perception that Samoans and Pacific Islanders in general should only excel in physical or athletic endeavors?
That's a good question. I think it just starts with us. Like, we have to be the difference.
Mm.
Um, right now we've done so much in those avenues in media and also in sports. I think Samoans are the highest per capita in the NFL. If you look at any ethnic group, Samoans, Pacific Islanders are the highest. And so and that's great. And I think there's nothing to take away from that. But I think we have to be the difference. We have to tell our kids, like, hey, if sports don't work out, that's okay. You can be a lawyer, you can be a doctor, you can be a teacher, you can be whatever you want to be. And we have to kind of be willing to be trailblazers. I know that when I kind of started this whole thing in politics, it was, one, I got a couple of reactions. Number one, people were saying, like, who is this guy? Who does he think he is? Like, who do you think you are to run it? Like, stay
Yeah.
in your lane. And I think that's one thing that I've realized is we just have to be comfortable with the uncomfortable, like, comments that will come our ways, because when you are starting in a new road and a new path, you're going to have a lot of people think and say different things, but you have to be comfortable with kind of the critics coming at you. And so I think we have to be the difference makers. Now that we know what we know, I think we have to change that ourselves.
I like that you mentioned that it starts from us, right? Because I feel like a lot of people don't understand that you can't pretty much rely on government and outside to take care of your kids. And I feel like at home, it starts at home, where you need to remind your child that they can be many more things other than just sports, or just limiting yourself to working right after high school and not furthering your education. I have another question for you. And what are the contributions of Samoans outside of sports that should be celebrated and recognized?
Outside of sports, I would say, well, the first thing is, I think, The Rock being someone, he's I think, still the highest paid actor in the world. But he's doing a lot of things there. I think there's music, right? Music, you hear a lot of Samoan and also Polynesian musicians gaining traction. I would say in broadcasting, you have some big names coming out in broadcasting. I think there's so many different avenues that we're starting to um, grow into, and I think there's an opportunity for us to highlight people who are doing it. I know doctors and lawyers now who are kind of making waves in their fields
Yeah.
too. And so I would say that that's something that we can do also, is those who are kind of stepping out and being trailblazers, we can highlight them and share their names and experiences with others, because then our kids can look to them and say, hey, someone who looks like me is a doctor. Someone like them who looks like me is an actor. I think I can do that too. And so I think that's something we can do on our end.
And this is why I have you on the podcast, because I felt like, to all my kids, like, if he can do this, you guys can do this too. If you don't want to listen to mommy, you can at least watch this. I have another question for you. All right. Let's see. How can you support your children through challenges of developing self-confidence in a world that often imposes unrealistic standards?
This is a great question, and something I actually just dealt with this week.
Oh,
So one thing is that I'm teaching my kids and wanting my daughters to get involved is golf. So my daughter is a golfer. She's been golfing since she's 5. She's now 11.
oh,
And yesterday we had a tournament where she was playing in, and she took 6th place, which is just outside of the medals. You give 5 places have medals, and 6th and beyond don't.
barely. Yeah.
And she wanted to leave, and I told her, nope, we're going to stay, and we're going to cheer on the others for winning, and you're going to be in the picture because you played in it and you participated. And she was emotional and was kind of crying on the course. And I said, Melolini, if you can learn how to lose and to have good sportsmanship now, later in life when things get hard, this is going to be you're going to be so prepared to take on challenges of life, because you've already dealt with disappointment and you've been able to keep your head high and do well. And so fast forward to the end of the tournament, We get there, the ceremony goes, they read all the names, she's not there. And then there's this kind of awkward, like, oh, there's other girls who do it. Oh, you guys come take a picture. And we've been there before where she's lost and she's usually crying. And I'm just kind of being the Polynesian dad, like, nope, you're going to sit there, you're going to watch, you're going to cheer, you're going to shake, shake
Yeah.
everyone's hand, congratulate them. But there was no tears. She was smiling. She was like, and so my message to her was, I don't care if you win or lose. I honestly don't care if you win or lose. What I'm going to celebrate and teach you is effort, hard work, perseverance, and being a good person. And
Mhm.
I posted something on social media last night after it is, I'm not raising a golf champion. I'm raising my daughter who's going to be a future mother, a future um, wife, and someone in the community that I want to have character, who can face challenges and be able to hold themselves with class and courage in the face of adversity. And so that's one thing I would say is, as parents, we need to teach that more, is especially with us having so many kids in sports, is we shouldn't celebrate them every time they win or they score or they get a tackle or they whatever it is, because I think in my opinion, I believe that what happens if we do that is that when that stops, when they stop scoring, when they stop playing sports, when they stop winning, they think that their value is tied to that winning and that wearing that jersey. And there is this, I think, shift that will happen in their lives where they have to move on to regular careers or being in the classroom. And so if we don't celebrate the effort and the perseverance and getting through hard things and just being a good person, I think we've missed the mark. And so that's what I would say to answer that question. I think it's a great question. I would just say that we need to start celebrating the skills that get us to being successful, but not the outcomes.
I agree. I agree. We just had another, well, the last podcast we had was a coach, and he talked about how they went to championship 3 times and they've lost 3 times. And the one thing that the boys learned is that they've learned to lose, but to keep their head up and keep on going. And so, and that was a good thing. And there was so much lesson learned because of that. So thanks for sharing that part of the lesson. And I believe everybody needs to take that too as well, because it does help in your future and your career. We have another question for you. Um, in what ways do you adapt your parenting style to empower your daughter while also ensuring she feels loved and supported?
Yeah. So I would say that right after, because she followed through and did her part of celebrating others, being able to take the loss and to stand there, take pictures, congratulate others. Then we went out and she got to pick out, where we go out to eat, right? And that's not something we do anyways, but it was like, hey, because you did this, we're gonna go out to dinner and you can pick wherever you want. And so one thing I also said to her was, I hope you realize now that I don't care if you win or lose. Like, I'm not mad at you. I'm not celebrate like I could care less. The fact that you had a good attitude is why I'm so happy right now. It's not because you won anything. And that was kind of our moment that we had in the car, crying, both of us crying, because she realized, I think, man, my dad actually believes in me and wants me to be a good person and doesn't he really doesn't care if I win or lose. It's really about being a good person and being a good sport.
Take me back to your childhood again, watching your parents. I've learned that you had followed your dad during his time as a construction working, doing construction work and stuff. What did that teach you as a child? I know there was a story you talked about. Um, you were questioning about why he was doing all this and for what purpose.
Yeah, I'll share that story. It was a hot summer day in Utah, which, if you've never been in Utah in the summers, they get really hot. It's dry
Yeah,
heat.
right.
And we were sweating and just working hard, cleaning construction sites. And this is when maybe I started realizing maybe my life isn't as normal as I thought it was, because every other kid is out playing sports and having fun and swimming, during the summer days. And I'm at work with my dad. And I think that started to click, and I started to just get this anger of like complaining of like, why am I doing this? I'm a kid. I'm supposed to have fun. Like all my friends are playing. They all want to ask me if I can play, and I have to go to work every day. Like I'm just a kid. And I kind of started getting in that mindset and that cycle of just complaining about life being hard. And I can remember the only reason I didn't quit from working with my dad that day was because I looked at him and he is just as hot, sweating, working hard, and didn't have any sign of complaint on his face. And I knew that if I stopped working, that he would do it all and he would have to do more. And that if I went and complained, he would say, okay, that's okay. You go sit in the truck in the air conditioning. And he honestly, genuinely wouldn't be mad. He would just say, yeah, go ahead. That's okay. And that's just who he was. He was just a loving, kind, hardworking man that he never would. And so that's why I didn't quit, is knowing that me not helping would just put more work on my dad. And so we're riding home from the job site and finally in AC again. And I'm kind of just getting like over the frustration. And I asked my dad a question that really has changed my perspective from that point on. And I said, Dad, why do you guys work so hard? And what is this all for? Like, what are we doing? And I'll never forget what he said to me. He said, son, the reason why we work so hard is so that you can get an education and you can be better than us. And in that little kid understanding, I finally realized that my parents were doing this all for us. That this wasn't just them going to work. This wasn't just what we like. The reason why they were sacrificing so much and working so hard was for all of us. And so that kind of just helped me later in life, and even from then on, realize that I needed to take education seriously, because if not, my dad is going to be working all day, every day, early morning, late nights. Like as a young kid, I think at first I thought, oh, well, that's what parents just do. They just go to work. But it was that moment that I realized, oh, they're really just doing this for us so that we can have the opportunities, so that we can play sports and they could buy us clothes and we could have food on the table. And that really has been my why throughout my childhood and even my adult life, knowing and really realizing the sacrifices my parents were making for us.
That is pretty amazing story, because some things that we learn in life, we hold on to the parts that makes us who we are, to remind us and humble us a lot. So that's why I wanted you to share that, because I thought that was very unique. Take me back to high school. When did you guys become state champion? Was it your freshman, sophomore, or senior, or was it all 4 years? Or
No, it was my senior year. So we were an average okay team. We weren't
Mhm.
anything special. Um,
You'd
but
say
every
that,
year,
but you guys won championship at the end.
that's true. That's true. But like the reason why I say that is, um, a lot of people, when they hear the name, at least in Utah, when they say, "Oh, where'd you go to high school?" and I say, "Oh, I went to Bingham High School," and they're like, "Oh, you went to that high school, right?" It's like if someone said they went to Kahuku and they're like, "Oh, you just went to the best." Like they always win championships. It's expected of you. Well, prior to this, no one had taken state for 60 years. And so it had been a really, really long time. And so we were just like an average team. We'd make it to the playoffs every year, but never win anything. Um, but I think there was just a different type of leadership on that team that really made it special. We kind of really got close together, and we had, I think, just a special group of kids. I think one thing that stands out with that in the high school years was, a lot of people talk about our varsity team. We went 14-0. We didn't lose one single game, which was rare at that time. But a lot of people don't talk about that we were actually 31-0. So our sophomore team and JV team was also undefeated. And I just think, man, just the leadership lessons I learned being a captain on that team, and like from the young sophomores all the way up to kind of the seniors on the team, there was just a mutual respect and love for one another that I think just made that team very different. That high school coach, he went on to, I don't know, he won maybe 5 or 6 state championships after that with Bingham High School. But he still says that team is the special team. And I think it's just because of the love that we had for each other and the respect we had. But high school was different. I did football. I also did student government. I did student government my sophomore, junior, and senior year. So I was involved in kind of the student politics early on, and I did that just because of my siblings. My siblings were involved in different sports. My brother did student government, and so I said, "Oh, that would be cool to do that too." My older siblings, they did choir, and so I joined choir. I was in band in middle school, and I had to make the decision because the band director at Bingham was like, "Well, if you play in band, you have to be in the marching band." And I'm like, "Well, if I play football, I can't
Yeah.
be in the marching band at halftime. How do I do this?" And so I think my high school years was really me figuring out who I am
Hmm.
and kind of really exploring so many things because I was involved in so many very different things that really allowed me to learn and grow differently than I would say just the average Polynesian kid who's like, oh, I just want to do sports. I feel like I did as much as I could during those years, and it really has shaped kind of my future in college and also my adulthood.
How did, okay, so you were inspired by your siblings to get into Student Body Council and all these other groups. W- That was, it kind of seemed like this is, it was preparing you for your future and also teaching you to do so many different things at one time. Because I know there are kids who are like, no, I got to get home. My parents want me to babysit and do all these things and do chores. And so, how was your parents able? What were their parenting like? Having kids with so many different curriculums and sports that they had to be a part of.
My parents. So when I said earlier that I when I speak to youth and young kids and I want them to know they can be anything,
Mhm.
my parents not only said that to us, but I think we believed it,
Mm,
which I think there's a disconnect, right? Everyone says that to us and they say that to all kids,
mhm,
but I think there's a difference when you actually believe it. And because of that, just that confidence they had in us, and then just kind of the confidence seeing my dad grow a company from nothing to doing construction for thousands of homes in Utah and with very little education, with very little background, like being able to do that, it just kind of seemed like that was normal, right? It just because it was like, oh, that's what we do. So I just like realized like, oh, if my dad is a self-starter and he can do these things, I think I can do that too. And so I think the early parenting of my parents was just really instilling us, okay, you guys, as long as we teach you how to work hard to and teach you all the skills that you need to, you can do anything that you want. And because of that, my siblings, as they grew up, I'm the youngest of five, they kind of did different things. My brother, my oldest brother, he played football. He was kind of the typical kind of athlete.
mhm.
He was Mr. Football in Utah. He went to play college football. And then my siblings that were younger than him started doing different things like choir, and they were in the school play, student government. They were on different leadership groups. And that being the youngest, I think was the biggest gift that my siblings could give me was doing so many different things and allowing me to see like, oh, that's interesting. I actually want to try that. Or, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't like that. Or I really like that. I'm definitely going to do that. And because they kind of paved the way for me, I think it made my high school years just a great learning ground for me.
I have to go back to your football, right? Just watching my kids with sports and seeing other parents with their kids, and everybody wants their school to go to championship. You being the captain, you mentioned that you felt like it was the love that you guys all have for each other. Was that what it took to make a champion? Because you tried freshman, sophomores, and junior, and it came to seniors when you guys started getting to state championship. What was it that connected everybody to say, all right, this is it, we're going to do this? Was it that respect to each other as a team, and what did you as a captain do to
Yeah,
help?
I think it was a player-led team. And so me as a captain, and I think we all expected one, I would say the captains held themselves to a high standard of we're going to be the first ones in all of practices. We're going to work the hardest. We're going to run faster than everyone. We're going to do the extra things, right? So when people got in trouble and they had to run after practice, you would see the captain start running with them, and then everyone look and like, oh, okay, let's all do it. And soon you would see the entire team running with that one person. And that's kind of how it was. If someone was in trouble, it usually wasn't the coach who was the first one to say something. If someone did something wrong or needed to be yelled at, it wasn't the coach yelling. It was usually the captains or other players calling them out. And I think that was what made the difference is we felt accountability to each other because we loved and respected each other, to the fact that we were just like, hey, we're all in this together. And that kind of selfish, I think part of, I don't know if it's in today's day and age, but I just see there's everyone wants to be the star. Everyone wants to have highlights. And so I never felt that on my team, on that team, where if we got in the huddle and there was a play being called at the very end of the game and we all wanted to be the star, I honestly feel like nobody would have cared who the ball was going to, that we would all have been happy for each other and been like, okay, that's what the coach called, let's go. And so I think that was just something that was built in, but it took leaders. There was, I would say, 4 of us who were seniors who'd seen us fail year after year after year, that realized like, okay, here's the difference is we need to be the examples. We need to be the ones who hold everyone accountable. And that starts with us individually, that we have to be the ones who are willing to work harder than anybody else on the team. And I think that's what changed it for us.
And you see sometimes a lot of parents, I've seen a lot of Polynesian parents who tell their kids that it's a waste of time of you playing sports. Academics is one thing, but I feel like sports helps you with the competitiveness and also being a team maker, team player. And I could see that in your leadership style. And that's why it's so important that we talk about that because it carries on into your life. And so fast forward into college, you graduated with your bachelor's degree, and then you decided to go on your master's, but you thought you were done, but you felt the need, the prompting to go back to school. How was that feeling for you? Because it's a big step, especially when you have a family. And how is that as a father, having to make all these decisions? That's a big step and a change. How did you feel about that? What did it do to you and your family?
That's a great question. Yeah, I think just to go back to give some context, like we, my family was settled. We kind of set roots in Utah. We bought our home. We kind of settled in our career. We loved our church community, and things were just going well. It just seemed like, man, life is going really well, and we're just so grateful for everything that we've been blessed with. But there was always just this like, man, I think you can do more. And that there's always that feeling. And I think it goes back to that story with my dad of realizing the reason they came here was for us to get an education. And can I get more education? And how is it going to benefit me and my family and maybe others? And it kind of, my wife and I, we'd felt like we were going to go back to school at some point, but we kind of kept on putting it off because life was going well. It was funny because we talked about it just recently during this time, and we kind of brushed it off. And then it was my dad who actually called, and he doesn't do this ever. He's not the type of dad to put himself in our lives and say, "Hey, son, this is what you need to do." But he called me and he said, "Son, me and your mom were just talking, and we feel like inspired to tell you that you should go back to school." And on the phone, I like audibly laugh, and I look at my wife Jocelyn, and I'm like, "You'll never believe what my dad just said." And she's like, "What?" And I said, "He thinks we should go back to school." And that was kind of the moment that we all realized that we'd all felt that same prompting. It didn't make sense. It didn't make sense at all because we would have to give up a lot. We would have to move our family wherever we were accepted. We would have to kind of quit our job, and so that career may go down the drain. We'd have to then go back into debt, which The graduate schools, the programs, the masters of business administration, the programs we were looking at cost anywhere around 200,000 plus. And so just the amount of, man, we have to give up so much to do this, but it's probably the right thing for us and our family and our future. And so we made the jump, and it wasn't easy. I had to start studying for the GRE is what
Yeah.
I decided to take, and had to raise money. My mom would sell plates so that I can get enough money to get a tutor to help me with those costs. Um, and then we'd have to pay for all of the applications, and I would have to do this all during work and with my calling at church. And so there was just a lot of things that were just tough hurdles. But I would just say there were many times during that process where we felt, I don't want to be too spiritual because this is not a spiritual podcast, but God telling us like, this is the right thing. And
Mhm.
every time it felt like, man, this is getting really too hard, it just seemed like there was just another blessing where something fell into place. And we were lucky enough to get into Rice University. And so we picked up and we moved to Houston, Texas. And we started on the journey of a 2-year in-person MBA program. And that has been such a huge blessing in our life. And one of again, me and my wife, after we got out of the college era of being poor and
Mhm.
eating saimini and like hot dogs and pizza and just like the poor married college life, we left that, and we were like, man, those years were so special because we literally had nothing but each other. And
Mm.
I also think that's probably how my parents felt at those early years of like, man, we grew so much as a family because we literally had nothing but each other. And so we were a little nervous to go back to that poor side of like, we don't have anything again. We now have kids. We're having our third kid. My wife was pregnant with our third kid. Um, and I think she had our third daughter 2 months before we moved, and then we took a
Wow.
newborn, and it ended up being exactly what we thought it would be. It just, we grew so much as a family, as a young family, because we had each other and we had to rely on each other so much. And so it was a huge blessing. And then, obviously gained more education. It opened up opportunities to work with some great companies, and that kind of led to the rest of my career.
Let me ask, let's go back to college, right? So I just want to ask about those who are currently in college right now, who feel the need, like instant gratification is what they want all the time, and what do you say to the young ones who are in college currently right now who are saying, I don't want to live like this. I feel so poor. I need to have this, 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 this. I need to be like my roommate who has a new car. I need to have new clothes, new shoes, everything. I feel like I'm this minority amongst everybody else around me. What do you say to those kids?
I think the first thing I would say is comparison is the thief of joy. And so just be very, very careful about comparing yourself with others, because you can just get into a mindset where it's so easy to compare with others and then feel less than, and that only just hurts you. And so I would say, first off, don't compare yourself, because it seriously is the thief of joy. The second thing I would say is college is laying the foundation for the rest of your life. If you build a home, you don't build on top of the ground. You don't just build up and just like, oh, let's just throw some walls. Let's start at the roof, and let's throw a window on it. There's a process in which you have to build a home so that it lasts, right? And the foundation is built first. And that's what you're laying now, is the classes that you're taking, the ability to stay organized, the ability to do hard things. um, I believe that not every class is, I used to think like, what am I going to use this for? Am I going to use calculus? Like, why am I taking this course? And I'm not going to sit here and say you're going to use every course that you take that is required for you to graduate. But I think the thing that it's teaching you is that you can do hard things and you can figure things out, so that when you get into your job and your boss says, I want you to run a data analysis on this. And you're like, I have no idea what that means. I don't know how to do that. I don't even know where to start. You've already done some of those things in college where you've had to get through things where you didn't know, you didn't understand, you didn't know where to start, but you've built the skills, and you've built kind of a foundation of saying, okay, how did I do this in college? Okay. And you kind of start off. And so that's what I would say is you'll be shocked and surprised that later on in life, you draw back on some of the lessons you learned and the skills that you gained in college that really will help you progress in life. But it really is, it's hard because you never see the foundation in a home, right? You
Yeah.
never see, you only see what's from the ground up. And so this is kind of you laying the foundation and making sure that it's your life is set up for success.
Cecilia commented time management. And so, yes, time management is very important. And that's something too that, it's very important that we need to have as a skill, which is also too, is learning how to speak. And going back to Houston, I also learned that you had served a mission in Houston.
I did.
Oh,
Yeah.
that was incredible. And then coming back, did you ever think that you were going to go back to get your master's in Houston at Rice College?
So that's the short version of that story is um it, it kind of came full circle for me. I had been waitlisted at 3 or 4 universities. Um, Rice at the time was maybe number 20 top ranked MBA program in the country, and um, I was applying there, and I got waitlisted there also. And I was just trying to figure out, how do I get in these schools? Like, I just can't break it. Like, I feel like my essays were good and I just did as much as I could. My test scores were just good enough to get into a top program. Like, how do I do this? And I felt impressed, like, okay, you've got to fly out there to these different schools. You've got to figure out, like, even if you have to just show up on campus to say, hey, I'm here. I want to be here. How do I become a student in your program? And so I started doing research on all these different programs. And as I looked at Rice University, I started researching kind of who is who and like who do I need to talk to. And I looked at kind of their board of overseers of their business school.
Mm.
And one of the people that were on their board of overseers was a member in one of the wards I served in. And was not only one of the members of the wards I served in, he also on my mission helped me teach a family, and eventually that family was baptized. And so we had not just we didn't just know each other, but he'd actually seen me as a missionary. We'd actually worked together, and so I emailed him. I told him the concern. We jumped on a call, and he kind of gave me feedback. And he said, "You know what? I will email the dean of the school and the admissions office right now. They would be lucky to have you." And a week later, I got my acceptance email, and that's what took me back to my mission in Houston, and Rice University. And that's been a huge blessing. Again, another way the Lord has just kind of proved that, hey, I told you to go through this process. It was hard. You were waitlisted. You didn't know if you were going to get in, and something else happened. And that was just another blessing that we were given at the moment we needed it.
Wow, that is very amazing. Full circle. Really, that is a full circle. Um, I wanted to ask about your journey as you look back in your life. Have you ever said to yourself, man, I wish I could change some things about myself when I was this little or when I was in high school, middle school, leading up to now? Have you ever thought about that? If there's anything you could do in your life, you could go back to at least change that one thing.
As I said earlier, I used to really struggle in the classroom, and it was um, I never felt comfortable in the classroom, which people from the outside looking like, come on, you were fine. Like, but the reality is I really felt inadequate in the classroom. And I think it was just because um, other kids had help at home and my parents weren't helping me with schoolwork. I've one kind of key memory I remember, and I'll kind of make this short. In third grade, we were supposed to do a science fair project, and I didn't know what to do. And so back then was Axe Jeeves before Google. I said, best science fair project. And the project came and it gave me the idea. I built it by myself. And I was so excited because I thought this was going to be the best science fair project. Well, I show up early and they had our little name tags on all the desks around. And I was like the first one there, set my thing up. And I'm like, man, these kids are going to be so amazed at this project. I was so proud of myself. And then in walked all of the kids with their projects, and following them was their parents. And they had signs, and they had these huge kind of projects that it was the first time that I realized that, man, their parents are all here and my parents have no idea that I have a science fair project. And I started to feel alone and started kind of to feel mad because I was like, where are my parents? My parents should be here. And I felt dumb and lonely. And it was the first time that I realized that I allowed myself to feel less than because I cared about what other people thought about me. And
Mm.
because of that, I knew that I didn't want to feel like that ever again. And that kind of always stuck with me. And I always felt shy in the classroom. And I used to think, man, I wish I could have changed that. And some of me as an adult now, I wish I could go back and hug that kid and say, it's going to be okay. You're going to be fine. But one thing that I'm grateful for being shy and not feeling adequate and maybe knowing the right answer, but not raising my hand and feeling maybe a little dumb now. And I'm okay with that. And I'm grateful for those experiences. Now, when I enter rooms where I feel confident and I'm in a room with government leaders and maybe I should be speaking up, I actually keep that same approach that I listen first.
Mm.
And I'm usually an observer. I'm usually quiet. People, when they first meet me, think I'm shy. And what I'm doing is I'm observing the room, which I've been used to growing up as a kid who felt inadequate in the classroom in different surroundings. And because of that, that then gives me the ability now to observe and learn. And then before I speak, I already have my thoughts put together. And then when I speak, people are like, oh man, that was well thought out. I thought this guy doesn't speak and I thought he was shy. But when I speak, then it seems that people listen because I don't speak a lot. But when I do it, I make sure that it's meaningful. And I think it goes back to those early ages where I felt shy to speak and I was just busy listening and observing, like, oh, what are we supposed to be doing? How do we do this? And it's really helped me as an adult in my roles in business and also in government.
Especially being the youngest out of all your siblings, observing all of them and the choices and decisions they made in their lives really helped shape you as well. Um, let's
Absolutely.
let's move forward to your decision to run for a U.S. state representative for District Number 48 in Utah. Um, you already had just you start working for Google. Your experience with the tech, working for Google, you have your business called Sojo, and that stands for South Jordan. Is that what I believe?
Mm-hmm.
And you have a calling, you have your family. You would think that damn, that's enough. I mean, what more do you want to do with your life? I mean, this is a lot going on for a father with his young family, and you've already put your family through. You've done your bachelor's. You put your family going through master's program. That wasn't easy, especially I believe while you're on your bachelor's, you ran for student body council. Is that correct? So you had all of that going on in your life, and here you are with so many different things just with your bachelor's. You thought you guys were good, comfortable. And a lot of people would say, hey, I'm done. We're just going to live this life through retirement. What was it that made you decide to jump into a position that you don't see a lot of Polynesians jump into, dealing with the position that you are currently at?
That's a great question. And I thought about this a lot. And I think it definitely goes back to the early days of my parents sacrificing so much. Like they sacrifice too much for me to just sit around and accept things to be the way they are. And as I kind of progressed in the business world and in my career and kind of being in Utah, I having the background of being involved in student government and things, I started being tied into what was happening locally. Like, what is the government doing? How does it affect my business? I was a business owner. And so the laws that they write and changes they make every year affected me. So I was like, oh man, that's interesting. COVID hit, and, local laws that were being pushed and mandates that were being pushed affected my business. I was in construction. We had to be out doing construction. And so I really learned how much government affects individuals, and they really affect our everyday life. And because of the decisions that were being made, especially in my district, we happen to live in Utah is one of the fastest growing states in the country. And we happen to live in Utah, in the part of Utah that is the fastest growing part of Utah. And so we've seen so much growth around my house that we purchased years and years ago. Our first house, it was just fields and fields. And now you don't even see a field for miles and miles, because it's just homes and homes and homes and businesses. And so there's just been so much growth. And I was just worried about some of the decisions being made. And I had voiced some of my opinions and reached out to my local government officials. And if I'm being honest, I wasn't super happy with their response. And it got to a point that I was like, man, I'm either going to have to I either need to stop complaining or I need to do something about it.
Mhm.
And originally how this started is I was actually looking for someone to run against the person that was in our district.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, I was like, hey, you should run. And they're like, why don't you run? And I'm like, oh no, I have my business, I have my calling, I have I'm good. I can't, I don't have time for this. I don't think my wife would let me. Good. And it got to the point where I came home one day and I talked to Jocelyn and I said, man, what would you just throwing it out there? What would it be like if we ran? What are your thoughts? And the 3 times I've ran for student office, I've been married to my wife. The 2 times I was student body president at Utah State, and also a president at Rice University. And every time she was like, oh no, not again. Please. And even when we went to Rice, she's like, please, can we just be regular students?
Oh.
Enjoy it and just not be busy. You've already done that. And I'm like, yeah, I'm good. I'm not gonna. And then of course I came home, I'm like, I think I got to run. And she's like, oh no, not again. So when I asked her this, I was expecting the same response, and I didn't get that. She said, you know what? I actually think you should do this. And I said, wait, hold on. This is not what I was expecting. I thought this was just going to be a fleeting thought, like a fast conversation that we would have. And you would just say, no, thank you, but that's not what we're going to do.
And then you
And
probably would have never done it if that was the case, right?
absolutely. It would have just been gone.
Yeah.
And so we had that conversation and I said, okay, I think we really need to think about this. And she said, yeah, I think you should do it. And I said, okay, I want you to take time to actually look at what life is going to be, because I said this moment will change our lives forever, because we will be in public office and people will have opinions about us. It'll change the way our kids live life now. We will be in the public eye. It'll change. Life will change. And so, it doesn't have to, if you don't want it to. I'm fine. And I said, I either need you to be 110% in, or we're going to be 110% out. And she said, are you sure? And I said, absolutely. I said, I promise that if you say no, I will not hold a grudge. I will not, this is not me. I'm not going to 10, 20 years from now, I'm not going to regret it and be like, oh, I'm so mad that my wife said no. I said, this is not worth our marriage and our family. And so if this is something we're supposed to do, I want to know from you, that you are 110% in. And so we went through the steps, we prayed about it. We fasted and did all the things that we do. And after about a week, she came and she said, okay, I'm in. And that's all I needed to hear.
Did you know she was going to say yes? Or were you just in the air? You just didn't know?
I actually was really nervous because it was becoming more real. Before, it was just kind of a joke and kind of like, oh yeah, I could run down the line. And so many people had brought it up to me like, oh, you should run. You've done student government, you should run for this. And I'm like, oh no, it's not for me. Thank you though. And this was the first time I was like, man, I actually don't know what she's going to say, but I have to be honest with myself and with her that if she says no, I have to be okay with it because I promised her I would. And so it was actually a lot of turmoil for me. And I went through the same steps. I took time to pray and go through those steps for myself. But I had no idea. And I was actually surprised and shocked that it was a simple answer. It wasn't like, yes, but and here's my list of things. It was just like, yes, I'm all in. And I think that's when we started, and we were off and running and built a team. And next thing you know, we were running a campaign.
Got a question for you. Where do you see the state in the next 10 years, and what policies are you focusing on to shape the future? Mhm.
It's a great question. I see Utah continuing to be a leader in the country. One area that I'm really proud that Utah has focused on is pro family policy, especially around social media and technology. We were one of the first states to pass a social media law. We were one of the first countries to pass a data privacy law,
Mhm.
um, and a lot of these laws that we passed, 3-4 years ago, have changed social media for the better. This last session, one of my colleagues passed a bill that changed the App Store, so Apple and Google Play, that there's age verification for certain apps,
Mm.
right? So there's applications that if your kid has an iPad or they have a phone and maybe it's their first phone and they're 14 or 15, that they can't just download any app, but that there's age requirements for certain apps. That kid apps, yeah, sure, you can download, but if it's an adult specific app, they have to age verify, and if not, then they have to get parent consent to download those specific apps. And so I'm proud of that one. And then one of the bills that I passed this last session that was really big was a tech bill that allows us as social media users to own, manage, and control our own data. And that we were the first state to pass any bill of its kind, and I think we'll see 5 or 6 other states in the
Wow.
next year pass very similar legislation, and that'll change the way that we interact online and the way that social media looks for us. Um, the way that it works today is our data that we post online, it's not ours. The moment we post it, it's the social media networks. And so this, I think, will change the game. And I see Utah and hopefully me playing a key role in it is leading in technology, and making sure it's a safer place for us as users and especially our kids.
And then also other states can follow suit to what the examples that Utah has set in place. So that's good. But it has to start somewhere. We have
For sure.
another question. What can citizens do to be more actively involved in their state political process, and how can they help bring about the changes they want to see?
I think the biggest thing that you can do today is find out who your representatives are and who your senators are, because you're their constituent. And so they owe you responses. And so with my constituents, they are the number one priority. If one of them texts me, call me, email me, they are the priority above anyone else. And I get tons of emails. I get hundreds of emails. It's slowed down a lot now, but it used to be hundreds of emails every week. And if people put that they're my constituent, they add their address, I respond back to them immediately. And I try to be responsive and have dialogue either through phone, text, email. And so I would just say knowing who they are and being very comfortable. And I would say even maybe even more important is that they know who you are.
Mhm.
And that comes with communication from you and saying, hey, my name is Doug. I'm your constituent. I have 4 kids. I believe in these things. Here's my priority is I want whatever that is, and sharing those thoughts. And then as you kind of get more familiar with the political process and understanding what laws are being reviewed or passed, then you can share your perspective on it and say, hey, this is going to really hurt my business. This is really going to hurt me and my kids. I asked you to support it or to vote against it. And those emails and messages, I can tell you from firsthand perspective, they really matter. I take kind of review of all of my constituents I've heard from, And not that I changed my principles ever, but it may change my perspective. And I may ask the bill sponsor, or even my bill, if it's my bill, I may change a couple of lines that help make it better for my constituents. And so I would say those are the first two things: is one, knowing who they are, and
Mhm.
then two, as you get to know issues, not being afraid to reach out and sharing your perspective.
What do you say to the younger generation who are going to watch this or who are currently watching this that want to be in your place in the future? What can they take from you to be able to get to that step? Because I know a lot of the Polynesian kids, one is that majority of them are afraid to speak up, you know, I say that because of through experience, and it took a lot for me to be able to speak up. And then two is that there's not a lot of support. And so they don't have the support and they don't have the information. So what do you tell these kids who are in high school, about to go to college, or thinking about it, and those who are in college who are in that phase of going through that process?
The first thing I would say is, and I mean this genuinely, if I can do it, anybody can do it. I mean, you've heard my story of feeling dumb in the classroom, and honestly, I wasn't the smartest kid. I wasn't, but I knew I could work hard. Um, and I think that's my message to all of you today, is that you can do it if you want. There was nothing really special about me. One thing I want to make clear is I used to be very, very uncomfortable speaking, and it didn't just come naturally. I share this a lot with youth groups and with kids that come and ask me. It's because I practice. It's something I learned with football, right? If I was going to prepare for a football game, the football game preparation doesn't happen that night before, doesn't happen the of that game. It doesn't even happen at the beginning of the season. It happens during the off season, right? Like during the summers where you're training, you're running, you're getting your stamina, you're in the weight room, you're watching film. That's when the preparation starts. And so I take that same mentality with everything I do. One of the videos that have kind of gone viral of mine is my first floor speech. And I've heard many people have come up to me and they're like, man, you're such a natural. You just speak well. Like you just seem so eloquent. And one thing they have no idea is that I spent hours and hours and hours practicing that speech. And I speak a lot at conferences and to youth groups, and people say that all the time. And the thing is that it doesn't come naturally to me. It takes practice. And so I would just say to anyone who feels inadequate or feels like they can't do it, or maybe feels uncomfortable speaking, or maybe see me and say, man, I could never speak like that, is knowing that it's come with many, many years and many, many hours of practice. My intern was laughing at me because I knew this bill was coming up and I knew I was going to speak on it. And literally that day, there was a 2 hour floor session. I was out every 10 minutes. I'm like, okay, it's not up yet. I'm going to go back out and practice. And she's like, again? And I'm like, yes, text me if it's coming up. And then I come back in and sit down and I'm just nervous. And I'm like, I'm going to go run it back 3 more times. And I'd go out and I practiced in an office where another intern was. And he's just like laughing because he's like, man, you practice more than I've seen anybody else practice. And that's just to show that, like, you don't have to be confident. It just takes hard work and practice, and you can do anything. For those who are like looking to get into it now, your second question, I would say this is probably the easiest time to get involved in politics. You literally can go to ChatGPT and say, how do I start getting involved in politics? And it would give you a long list. And or if you wanted to run your campaign, and what are the steps to run an effective campaign, and you could know that the steps. And so I think it just starts with moving. I think the thing about some people and some of us, why we fail, is because we get stuck in I need to have all the information before I act and before I take the first step. And I would say in entrepreneurship and starting a business, and also in politics, is that the best learning and experience happens when you're actually moving forward. And so take a
Mhm.
step today, make that step, and then what's the next step, and just continue moving forward, and you'll learn as you go. And that's how I started the business. And maybe some people would say, that's crazy, why would you start a business when you didn't have all the pieces? But because I did that, that's what gave me the experiences. We didn't always know what we were doing, but because we were willing to make the next step and learn on the way, I think that's what helped us to be successful. And so that's what I would say. If you want to get involved, just make a decision to do it now. What is that next step, that very next step? And then just continue to make those next steps.
So I love the movement that you're pushing is to save the family. And so I don't know why I have to ask this, but what can you say to fathers out there? Because I see the just learning about you and your partnership with your wife. It's so important. And what can you say to fathers, um, young and old? What advice can you give them to save their relationship, their family, to so that when their kids have their kids, they'll be able to carry that family standards to the next generation?
That's a great question, and I feel inadequate answering that. I don't know that I have all the answers, or that I'm the perfect husband or father. But I'd go back to some counsel that I was given. I think the best thing that you can do for your kids is love their mother. Um, and I just, if you can do one thing for your kids, is treat your wife with love and respect. Treat her like the queen she is. Um, Treat her as the partner that she is, and just treat her with respect. And your kids, your sons will see that, and they will respect women. They will respect their wife and respect women that they date later in life. And then also your daughters, which I think is more importantly, they will know how a man should treat them. And so when they're dating and you don't like a guy they're dating, they will make the decision themselves. And again, I'm not adequate because my daughters are still young, but I hope that my girls will know, nope, that's not the guy I want to date, because I know how my dad treated my mom, and this guy does not treat me like that. He does not make me feel the way that my dad makes my mom feel. And so that's what I would say is the best thing that we can do. And everything that I'm doing in politics is really to protect that, is to protect my relationship with my wife, protect the relationship with my kids, and preserving that. And hoping that my kids can have the same experience. I really believe that the best learning that happens is in the home. I actually believe that government should stay out of
Hmm.
a lot of our lives, and out of what a lot of things. And that's what I'm trying to do also, is keep government out of our lives, and keep them out of our families, and keep everything else out. Because I think the the best thing, I think our purpose in life is really to be good husbands and fathers. And if we can do that, I just think we would live a successful life. It's not about money, it's not about titles, it's not about a career. um, it's not about sports, it's not about all that stuff. All that stuff is just noise.
Hmm.
And I think if we focus on those two things, man, our kids will be set up for success, and we will have successful families.
I totally agree. And thank you so much for sharing that. I thought that was very important. And as we end our podcast, I want to say thank you so much, Doug. There's so much more we could talk about. And I wanted to be able to share more of the other side of Doug and what his purpose is about. And so that everybody out there look him up, because you fall in love with what he's doing and what he's standing up for. And it's very important that we understand everything what his journey is, because if he can do it too, I mean, we can also do our part as well in our family. And thank you so much, Doug. Is there anything you want to say before we close out?
Just thank you. Thank you for what you guys are doing and sharing the message to our people. I think it's just so important for them to see just different people in different industries doing their best, and just appreciate the message you guys are sharing. And grateful to share my story, and hope that it helps someone. Don't be afraid to reach out. I'm pretty active on social media, on Instagram and Facebook, and happy to answer any other questions or respond to any DMs or messages.
Mhm.
But thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Doug. And yes, and by the way, when he says that he's going to reach out to you and message you back, he does. So, and he's not lying. So, thank you so much, Doug. And as always, to God be all the glory. And everyone have a good night. Doug, you and your beautiful family have a good night. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care. Bye bye now.